Hello viewers, this is Austin. So today in the US, an American supporting Manipur cause, and he is doing the hunger strike. So there are a lot of other people who support this and who express solidarity. They have joined. So we want to know who is this Pieter Fredrich, why he is supporting, why he is supporting him in this cause. We have seen him. We have seen him with the banners in front of White House when Modi was here. When we Indians, we just hashtag Modi not welcome, go back Modi. He was there in front of White House. So we want to get to know about him. So let us welcome Peter, and from his home, he's doing his hunger fast. We are going to get to know and have a chat with him. Hey, Peter, thank you so much at the outset for giving time to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you, Austin, for having me. I'm glad to be here. How you doing?
Good, Peter. Thank you. Thank you so much. Peter, we see that, you are making a lot of noise, and I would say more than a lot of Indian Americans, right? So first, we want to know that first we want to thank you for doing this hunger strike. It's a virtual hunger strike. People around in our media platform like our YouTube, our Facebook, and Twitter, we go live, and many people are watching, right? So why this hunger strike, and what made you to do this hunger strike?
Sure. Well, I just began hunger strike today. I am happy to talk about it as far as this is actually my third hunger strike in about 2 years. But this specific time today, the reason that I began is that I am deeply concerned about the violence currently ongoing in Manipur, which has not stopped in almost 3 months, and which is specifically targeted against Christian tribals in Manipur. I want to draw attention to this issue, but the specific demand of my hunger strike is that this congressman in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area of California, named Ro Khanna, who is an Indian American congressman who is a Hindu. My specific demand is that he use his position in the US Congress to take advantage of that and do what is available to all members of US Congress, and go and spend at least a few seconds, or ideally a little bit longer, speaking on the House floor, on the floor of US Congress. I'm demanding that Ro Khanna go and speak on the floor of US Congress against the violence in Manipur, which is targeted towards Christians. Now, why am I demanding this of Ro Khanna in particular? The reason is because, one, Ro Khanna is the only Indian American, the only member of the only person of Hindu faith in U.S. Congress who 4 years ago came out and made history by declaring that it is the duty, he said it is the dharma of every American politician of Hindu faith to reject Hindutva, to reject Hindu nationalism. He said that. Now, he said that 4 years ago. Now we're seeing the manifestation of Hindu nationalism in Manipur, in real life, in real time. And so that's one reason that I'm demanding this of Ro Khanna. The other reason is because for the past 1 year plus, I have been in direct communication with Congressman Ro Khanna. I have his personal cell phone number. He gave it to me. I met him last month. I met him for about an hour and a half on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I met him. I met his chief of staff. And I spoke with him about what's happening in India extensively. And he's very, very, very well aware of what's happening in India. He was talking with me at the time, a month ago, about what's happening in Manipur. He's been completely silent about it. He has not made statements about it. He needs to use his position as a member of U.S. Congress to go and take that time on the floor of the House of Representatives, on camera, in public, to denounce the anti-Christian violence that is currently occurring in Manipur. So because he's come out against Hindutva, and because he's the only one that has ever done so in Congress, and because I am in direct communication with him, and I hope to continue to be in communication with him directly after this, if he doesn't cut me off as I'm calling him out. But I am here to call him out and say, Ro Khanna, you need to speak out against what's happening in Manipur against tribal Christians.
Oh, thank you so much, Peter. You very well explained. 4 years back, Ro Khanna, he stood against communism, fascism, and Hindutva, right? So you believe since he stood against this 4 years back, since you are in touch with it. So what message you wanted to tell other people? There are a lot of other Indian Americans in this country. So they hear this incident, they hear the suffering and the violence, the riot and the crisis, they hear. And some got excited only by the viral video. Even before that, from May onwards, they are silent. They pretend like they are sleeping. So we need to awake them, right? So they need to call their own congressmen and women. They need to call their senators. So do you think this hunger strike will be an inspiration for more activism in America?
Well, I certainly hope it will be an inspiration for more activism in America. As far as members of the Indian American community, there's a few things, a few messages that I have. One is, what's happening in Manipur is certainly, as most of us know, not the only incident of anti-minority violence that has occurred and perpetrated under the Modi regime. I mean, looking back at, what was it, February 2020, we had the Delhi pogrom against Muslims. And of course, we have other examples, small and large, over the past 9 years of the Modi regime, in which minorities of many different faiths have been victimized, have been attacked. Certainly, we have also Burma farmers' protest. We have the attack on Sikhs who were protesting, in which there were people that were run over and killed in a car that belonged to, as I recall, the son of a cabinet minister in Modi's government. And so one message is that in working and struggling on these issues, it's very important to bring together people of all faiths, all religious minority backgrounds, and to talk about and against the violence perpetrated by this Hindu nationalist movement. To talk against it in terms and in context of support for everybody, whether they're Muslim, Christian, Dalit, Sikh, Buddhist, atheist, communist, etc., etc., etc. That's one thing. Another thing is, in context of the current issue in Manipur, many of the victims in Manipur from the Kuki-Zo tribal community are Christians, and the atrocities being perpetrated are primarily basically against the Christian community in Manipur. In their actions in America, one of the things that I would plead with the Kuki-Zo people who are in this country, who are speaking out, is that they need to outreach to American Christian churches, and by that I mean non-Desi churches, non-Indian American churches. They need to outreach to churches which are not from Indian American community and educate them, because in my experience, and I speak as a Christian, in my experience, most non-Desi Christians in this country, in America, have no idea that there is even any persecution being perpetrated against Christians in India, let alone have any idea of how severe it is. And in my opinion, it's much more important for the American church to speak out than it is for the American government to speak out. But the American church is not speaking out at all. And one of the reasons they're not doing that is partly because they don't know that Christians are being persecuted in India. So to any Kuki-Zo tribal Christians, to any Indian Christians, I would say priority number one is get in touch with non-Desi, non-Indian American Christians, Christian churches, Christian clergy, and educate them about what's happening to Christians in India, and harass them until they start talking about it and praying about it. Last thing and third thing is call your representative in U.S. Congress if you live in the U.S., or even if you don't live in the U.S., call a representative in U.S. Congress. And right now, in context of the fact that I am on hunger strike, I would say call Congressman Ro Khanna. Here's his number. Congressman Ro Khanna's number is +1 408 436 2720. +1 408 436 2720. That is the number for Congressman Ro Khanna's office. Congressman Ro Khanna is an Indian American. He's a Hindu who has come out against Hindutva. Call his office. Tell him, and this is the demand of my hunger strike. Call him. Call his office. You will not get a person on the line. You will get an automated answer. Call, press number 3 to get to the voicemail. Call that number, press number 3 to get to the voicemail. And when you leave a voicemail, say, I am calling to demand that Congressman Ro Khanna speak on the House floor of Representatives against the persecution of Christians in Manipur. Call that number, press 3, go to the voicemail directly, leave a voicemail, and say, I am calling to demand that Congressman Ro Khanna speak on the floor of the House of Representatives against the ongoing attacks on Christians in Manipur.
Oh, thank you so much, Peter. We have given the number. We also display on the screen. So anybody who view live now or later, get able to see the number again: 408-436-2720. 408-436-2720. Please do that.
And
Peter,
from there, press number 3 to go straight to voicemail. Leave a voicemail.
Very good, yeah. So, Peter, you said, I have 2 questions. So, people, whoever I talk, whether it is Vijayalakshmi or John Prabhudas or everybody talk about Peter. So, they say, we Indian American need to feel guilty because we are not doing much as Peter does, right? So, they see Peter as an inspiration. So, just to switch gear, we want to know, what made you, to passionate about human rights and activism?
That's a good question that requires a bit of an answer.
No, people who watch his strike, people who watch his video, they'll be much interested. See, there are a lot of Indian Americans and an American fighting for us. So, how he was become passionate about this. I see.
Well, there's a number of things I could unpack about that, Austin. So one is that, I don't appreciate, with respect to my parents, I don't appreciate everything about my upbringing as a child, and they'll understand this. One thing I do appreciate is that I was raised in a household that was focused on reading and also focused on consuming a lot of movies that are classic movies. And when I say classic movies, I mean from the 1940s, 50s, 60s, old movies. And a lot of the stuff that I read and a lot of the movies that I watched were about the Second World War. And unlike many Americans, I don't actually have family that served in that war. But I did have an introduction and an exposure to a lot of material about it. And in that, I was exposed to a lot of materials about fascism, about the Nazis, about the Holocaust. I was in particular exposed to a lot of materials that were written by people like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a pastor in Germany. He was German, in Germany during the Nazi era, who came out and organized against Germans, organized the German church against the Nazis, and was executed for it. I was exposed to materials by Anne Frank, who was arrested and executed in a Jew who was arrested and executed in the Netherlands. I was exposed to materials by her name's escaping me at the moment. She wrote a book called The Hiding Place. This lady that was from the Netherlands. She was Dutch. Her family, her father, she was unmarried. Her sister and her father gave refuge to a large number of Jews during the Second World War. And they were ultimately discovered and arrested for it. This lady was sent, and her sister was sent, and her father was sent to the concentration camps. And her sister died, her father died, she survived, and she wrote about it afterwards. I was exposed to a large number of materials like this. And so I grew up with an innate hatred of fascism. I grew up with an innate disgust for the sort of othering of people that have led to the Holocaust. And then once I was introduced to members of the Indian diaspora, and especially once I was introduced to them and then began to see the changes that were occurring in India post 2014 after Modi came to power.
Oh, Peter, seems like we have some network issues we are experiencing. Right, you are frame is frozen. So viewers, if you are watching, we are watching an interview with Peter. Peter is doing a hunger strike. He is doing a sit-home hunger strike, demanding the representative Ro Khanna respond and talk about Manipur issue on the floor. Yes, Peter, you are back. You are talking about how you got into this, like the movies, the books, the material, and the living condition, right? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and switch to my my Wi-Fi because my home internet is a little bit unstable. But yes, I was talking about that, about how basically my growing up in my childhood, I grew up with this innate hatred of fascism. And once I connected with the Indian diaspora, and especially after 2014, when Modi came to power, this really began to come into real world context for me. And now today, I've been involved for almost 20 years in researching, writing, and talking about issues related to human rights, primarily in India. After almost 20 years of that, my personal life, my professional life are completely intertwined. Basically, everybody I know is in India. Basically, everybody that I interact with on a daily basis is from India. And so it has become, at this point, a deep personal passion for me to take up the cause of the people who are the people that I am most intimately connected with in my life.
Yes, Peter, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my answer to.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Peter. There is little disturbance on network. Peter was sharing with us, how his like the movies, the classical movies, and the war movies, and the books he read, and other inspiration made him to take this. Right? Yeah. Thank you so much. We all, and I think your younger Indian American generation here, they need to see Peter and learn, how he's being an activist, who is raising voice against this. Peter, like earlier you said, so we need to involve non-Desi churches, right?
Yes.
So yeah, we have here we have United States Bishop Conference, right? So
yes.
We have different things. So how? What should be the strategy to bring them in, or educate them, or get them informed what is happening in Manipur?
That's a good question, and I don't have a perfect answer. But as far as strategy, one of the initial things, of course, I would say is just begin talking to them. Because in my experience, I've had coffee or lunch for an hour or 2 hours with clergy members, multiple clergy members over the past year. And in my experience, when I'm sitting and I'm having coffee with them, most of them, they don't know anything about what's happening in India. I remember in particular, one clergy member, I was having lunch with him, probably about 1.5 hours into the lunch. As I'm talking with him, I thought that I had already communicated the point, but he ends up asking me, finally, as he's sitting there scratching his head, he's like, so what does persecution of Christians in India look like? Does it look like job discrimination or housing discrimination or like employment discrimination or social boycotting? And I respond to him, I'm like, well, yeah, yes, that's part of it. But no, what it looks like is it looks like on Sunday, Christians are holding Sunday service. An armed mob, which is oftentimes accompanied by the police, shows up outside of the sanctuary. They burst into the sanctuary, they invade it. They smash up the sanctuary. They grab the clergy member and the congregants and they beat them up. And they take them, and if the cops aren't there already, they haul them down to the police station and they turn them over to the police. And the police file charges against the victims, not the perpetrators. And this clergy member that I'm sitting there having lunch with, finally a light bulb goes off in his head. And he's like, oh, like the Nazis? And I'm like, yes, exactly. Thank you, sir. Like the Nazis. It's like that. That's the type of persecution that Christians are experiencing in India right now. Yes, it's job and housing discrimination and social boycotting, but it's more than that. And so as far as the strategy, what I would say for any Christians is that, for any Daisy Christians, is that I would bet that any non-Daisy, non-Indian Christian contacts you have, clergy, laity, whatever, they probably, unless you already talked to them about it, they probably don't know that there's any persecution happening against Christians in India right now, let alone how severe it is. So the first step in strategy is to pick up the phone, make an excuse, call them, and tell them about it. Next step, of course, would be they need to start talking about it. And beyond that, there's certainly things to discuss. But the first thing I would say is that the church in America needs to be educated. Because the church in America is right now basically, by and large, completely silent about the issue of Christian persecution in India. And I will caveat this and say, for those watching, listening, Christians are not the only religious minorities being persecuted in India. We are talking about persecution of Christians in India in this moment. The church in America doesn't know about it, and if they don't know about it, they can't pray about it. And if they don't know about it, they can't talk about it. So first thing is they need to be educated about it, and
Yes.
ideally they need to be told about it by Indian Christians, because that has a lot more impact.
Okay, very good. So you rightly said, right? So the church here is unaware of that or being ignorant of that. So the responsibility lies in the church back in India, right? So the church back in India. So the same here, like they have a CBCI there, right? They have the Bishop Conference of India there. They have a lot of different churches. They have this federation, and there are a lot of councils. So they also need to take responsibility.
Yes.
So now I just wanted to add one more question. Not just Christians. So we also need to include other faith associations or even people who don't have any faith, non-faith. Because here in what we call Ambedkar supporters and the Periyar supporters, they are all they do support kind of this social action. So how do we do them in?
How do we loop them in?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Certainly for the Indian diaspora, as far as taking action, I mean, you loop them in by you call them. If you have friends in the diaspora who are Muslims or Sikhs who are secular Hindus, who are etc., and you want to engage in some kind of an activity to draw attention to what's happening in India, the atrocities there, you call them, you invite them. You also, one way to loop them in is by beginning to talk about them. And I'm a big on affirming the importance of this, is that people of one faith who are being persecuted need and must talk about people of other faiths who are being persecuted. And actually, as a Christian, it's mandatory, it's a duty within our faith. It's a good Samaritan act for us to talk about other people who are not from our community who are being persecuted, and to care about them, to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so, in context of India, when Indian Christians are talking, they need to talk about how Muslims are also being persecuted. They need to talk about how Sikhs are also being persecuted. They need to talk about how Dalits are also being persecuted. They need to talk about how anybody, I mean, look at the case of Rahul Gandhi and his, basically criminalization of the opposition with this defamation case that he faced. They need to talk about how basically anybody who speaks out or opposes the regime in India, faith-based or not faith-based, is being persecuted. So I guess that would be what I would say is
Abdullah?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, there was someone, Peter, we continue.
That's what I would say is the first step is for people who are talking to begin talking in context of talking about every community that's being persecuted.
Okay, very good, Peter. Thank you so much. I mean, we should not just Christian alone. We also need to involve other faiths, right? And non-faith organization, association, community groups as well. Peter, I have seen that earlier you have been talking about your interaction with Representative Ro Khanna. Could you just help us to rewind and tell us back how you have contacted Ro Khanna and what he promised and what is the interaction? So could you give an update on that?
Sure. Well, I did not contact Ro Khanna. He contacted me.
Okay.
In 2019, after I published an article, which was a cover article for India's Caravan magazine about Tulsi Gabbard and her connections to internationalist groups in America, Congressman Ro Khanna, unprompted by me, he came on my Twitter account and he posted a reply to that article. In that reply to that article, Ro said that it is the duty of every American politician of Hindu faith to reject Hindutva. After he did that, or like within minutes, I guess, Congressman Ro Khanna texted me directly. He DM'd me on Twitter privately. And from there, I've been in touch with him ever since. He contacted me. After he did so, we've been back and forth sharing information. I've shared him information from my end about issues I'm working on, about politicians in America who are linked to the Hindutva, etc. About a year ago, in June of last year, I ended up, and this I'm not certain on, I don't recall, because this was a year ago, if he reached out or I reached out, but I think it was him. Ended up setting up a lunch with him in his district. I had lunch with Ro for about an hour. We discussed a variety of issues, kind of got to know each other, talked about my work, talked about his perspective on India. And then last month, I was in Washington, D.C. to protest Modi, who was visiting and having a state dinner and speaking to a joint session of U.S. Congress, based off of the invitation partly from Ro Khanna. I texted Ro. I told him I was in DC. I said, would you like to meet up and have coffee? He said, sure, let's, come to my office. So I came to his office. I went to his office about a day after, about the day after Modi actually spoke at this joint session of U.S. Congress. I went to Ro's office on the 23rd of June. I spent about an hour and a half walking around Capitol Hill with him and his chief of staff as well, discussing issues related to India, discussing what is happening in Manipur, discussing the violence there, discussing how Ro is planning to go visit India next month in August, discussing how Ro needs to sit and meet with people in America and also in India who can educate them about the human rights violations occurring in India. And that's a little bit about my relationship with him and how it developed. I texted him today itself, telling him I'm on hunger strike to demand he speak on the House floor of Representatives against the anti-Christian violence in Manipur. He's seen it. He's responded a few hours back. He's told me that basically, paraphrase, that he's going to India next month, that he intends to bring it up there, that he thinks that that's like the most effective way to do it. Basically, my takeaway is that he intends to only bring these issues up privately and not in a public forum, and that's not okay. That's not enough. My demand is that he must use his position if he's staying true to his words, that he's against Hinduism, and that it's the dharma, the duty of every American politician of Hindu faith to renounce it and stand against it. Well, this happening in Manipur right now is a manifestation of the ideology of Hindu. It's a real world in real time manifestation of that. And if Ro's going to stay true to his words, then what he needs to do is he needs to go public in coming out against the violence in Manipur. And so that's my demand. Specifically, that he speak on the floor of Representatives.
Thank you so much, Peter. You are doing hunger strike. You are starving, but you're talking. I'm going to give a break, right? So we are going to get other people.
Well, I'm not starving yet. I've just started today.
Okay.
But yeah. Check back with me in a couple of days.
Good. We appreciate, your stamina and your willpower. So now, I just wanted to get other people. Thank you, Sean. We'll get them. Before that, the popular, Pastor Martin Nemolia's word. First, they came for the communists. I did not speak out. Then they came for the socialists. I did not speak out because I'm not a socialist. They came for the trade unions. I did not speak out. Then they came for the Jews. I did not speak out. At the end, they came for me, and there was nobody to speak for me. The same way, there are a lot of Indian friends here. There are a lot of Indian friends around us. They just keep silent. Some are pretending to be deaf and dumb. No, time we need to speak up. We need to stand up. Oh, I'm not from Manipur. I'm not from Northeast. I'm from South. I'm from East. No. Today, what is happening in Manipur can happen tomorrow in any state, any city, and to you too. So, friends, it's a time to wake up. So, let us get our Mate. Mate has been a very, very